With Russian aggression reaching new levels in the past week across Ukraine, President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is appealing for more help from NATO partners.
CTV's chief international correspondent Paul Workman is in the Ukraine capital of Kyiv and asked Zelenskyy today about Canada's role in supporting Ukraine.
Canada is reacting promptly enough to our requests concerning the support of Ukraine, and this is true. This is more than partnership. It's something more, something bigger. It's like being relatives, regardless of the distance. I want to emphasize once again, the distance between the states is not measured in kilometers. It is measured in completely different things, in values and in attitudes towards each other's history. It's a very powerful support. Not every state can boast of that amount, although at the same time Trudeau is not boasting. I'm again very grateful to him. I realize that this is not the money of the government, but first of all it is the money of the society and the taxpayers, so I'm truly grateful.
Okay, so for more on his interview with Ukraine's president, we're joined live from Ukraine, of course, by Paul Workman right now. Paul, interesting tone that Volodymyr Zelenskyy was striking in that conversation with you there. I wonder, if you could just talk more about how he seemed to you. I mean, his country's been under attack for some 7 months now. Before we get the nitty-gritty of the interview, just how he seemed, because we've seen him in so many videos, but you've seen him in person now.
Yeah. Well, in fact, first of all, he was quite effusive about his praise for Canada. I put the question to him because Ukraine had asked for more armored vehicles and weapons from Canada, and they haven't received them. I'm not sure if they've been refused or whether that's still being looked at. And I asked him if he was sort of fed up with that, and was he disappointed? And you heard his answer. He was very strong on the amount of support that Canada has given to him. On the question of him and his daily routine, I also asked him, okay, you're living in this fortress. You live and work in the same fortress. How do you cope? How do you keep motivated? And he went on to say that he tries to be as human as he possibly can. And I think that he didn't want to get used to the idea that Ukrainians were being killed so much. And he sort of seemed to be saying that it was outrage that drove him on, outrage that motivated him. But he also said that he likes to get out and do as much as he possibly can so that he can talk to everyday Ukrainians and find out how they're feeling and how demoralized they are. He said he sometimes tries to go out and drive around as well, which it's hard to imagine considering under the conditions that he lives and his people are now living under. He also said he tries to relax at night. He didn't explain what he meant by relaxing, but I think it meant watching a bit of television and going on social media, in fact.
Wow, that's interesting that you got that personal kind of answer from him, Paul. And you also asked President Zelenskyy what his plan was for defending his country against these kamikaze drones that recently hit the capital of Kyiv. A lot of these drones are targeting power stations, and especially with winter coming up, it's going to be tough. What was his answer?
Well, these drones, of course, are quite insidious, and we did question him quite a bit about the drones, what he could possibly do, how you can defend against them. He essentially said, "Look, we need better air defense systems, and to send up expensive missiles against these drones is a very difficult thing to do." I also asked him about Iran supplying these drones, and he went on to say that, look, Iran has denied that it's doing that, but in fact we know that they have hundreds of drones, maybe thousands, he said, and they're killing Ukrainians with these drones, trying to destroy the energy system. In other words, trying to starve or freeze Ukrainians to death with these drones. Interestingly, in the middle of the interview, he looked at his phone and sort of turned to us and said in English, 5 more drones have attacked us. And he said they'd been shot down by the defense system. And then a few minutes later, we heard a couple of detonations. You could actually hear the detonations inside this room where we were doing the interview. And he looked again at his phone and said, that's our defense systems doing what they're supposed to do.
Wow. Okay. So some real-time reality there, Paul. That's fascinating insight into sort of the,
Yeah.
what you're, facing during this interview here. Interesting. In the clip we sort of brought you in on, he talked about how grateful he was to the international community, connecting. We're family, we're related. Doesn't matter about how far away we are. But does he allude at all to any disappointment in the international community that things aren't happening as quickly as they need to, especially in light of these air attacks?
Oh, yeah, very much so. And he said this before, and he said it again. I think Canada's given something like $2 billion in Canadian funds. And he said other countries, of course, haven't done nearly that much. Look, he's definitely worried that the Europeans will not keep up their support, and obviously the Americans. So they put a lot of attention on keeping in touch with America, keeping in touch with the European leaders to make sure that the support is sustained. I think that's one of the worries they absolutely have. But sure, he's disappointed by some of the countries inside NATO. He's disappointed by NATO's response as a whole, I think, as well. Mm-hmm. But he knows that he's just got to live with that. He also did say, look, our people are scared from these drones, and it's really terrible, but we have no choice, and we have to fight back, and we'll fight back as long as it possibly takes.
Wow. Incredible stuff. All right, CTV's chief international correspondent, Paul Workman, live for us in Ukraine. And of course, you can catch Paul's interview on CTV National News tonight. Thank you, Paul.